All right, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. You know my next guest, and I always look forward to having him on. And I'm speaking of Josh Hammer. He's the senior editor at large for Newsweek, but also he's out with a new book that I want to get into shortly, and it is titled Israel and Civilization, the Fate of the, now I can barely see here, the Fate of the Jewish Nation with the Destiny of the West. Is that what I think I can barely see without my glasses here, Josh? So hopefully I got the entire title correct. But the good news is I have ordered the book, and I have a feeling that you will too after this interview. Josh, let me start off in a different place, because I think I know where you're coming from. I saw you on Mark Levin's show just over the weekend here. So I think I know where you're headed with this book. I'm looking forward to getting into it. But let me ask a simple question, because I think that you write about some very important topics. And one is, can secularism save America?
Carl, the short answer is no. Secularism has no chance of saving America. Secularism is it's an anti-ideology. It's not even an ideology. It's an ideology of nothingness. It's an ideology of rejection of the past, of rejection of our heritage, rejection of the entire predicate, the entire precepts of our great country, the United States, and frankly of Western civilization at large. Secularism is frankly just one manifestation, one example of values neutrality, really. And if you're going to have any chance whatsoever, Carl, of turning back the tide against the three hegemonic forces that are seeking to engulf and ultimately subjugate our entire civilization, in the book, I identify those three forces in no particular order as wokeism, Islamism, and global neoliberalism. Nature abhors vacuum, and so does the battle of ideas. And when you're trying to push back against wokeism, Islamism, or global neoliberalism, you have to have something to stand on. You have to present an alternative moral narrative there. You have to actually make a positive argument, not just reject something. Secularism is a rejection, again, of God, of our inheritance, of the Bible, and so forth there. So the antidote for all of this, I argue in the book, Israel and Civilization, is for Jews and Christians alike to stand shoulder to shoulder and lock arms and to embark on the joint project of rediscovering our shared biblical past and ultimately making biblical values and the biblical precepts of this great country and the entire West to make that great again.
Josh, let me ask you this, because I'll be frank with you. There's times where I've felt like that, even though within the conservative movement embraces the Judeo-Christian value system by and large. But I have gotten to a place where I feel like that's occurring less and less, even within conservative circles. I heard you make a fabulous point that I'd love for you to talk about. And what is Western civilization in general? I mean, is it just those of us that are, the NATO, our NATO allies? Is it just the United States? What is Western civilization? What do you mean by that? Because it's not just about geography or allies, frankly.
Right. So I make this argument quite concretely and straightforwardly in the book, Carl. I mean, these are the beginning chapters of the book. Chapter 2 and 3 really dives in and takes this question directly head on. I argue in the book, Carl, the Western civilization actually begins with God's revelation to Moses and the Israelites at Mount Sinai. And that's so much of what we take for granted today when it comes to law and ethics and morality and politics and all of the above, from the English common law tradition through the American founding, American constitutional order. Also just basic day-to-day ethical norms. I mean, something as prosaic that you might not think about a whole lot as the golden rule. I mean, what I was taught in kindergarten, treat others as you want to be treated. Well, where is that coming from? It's actually coming from Leviticus chapter 19. I mean, you should treat a stranger or as your own fellow. And again, this is because there was a world-altering revelation to the children of Israel there at Mount Sinai following the Exodus from Egypt. Now, there are some folks, Carl, who describe Western civilization. Leo Strauss would be a particularly notable example, the great 20th century University of Chicago political scientist who described Western civilization as this DNA-like double helix of sorts between reason and revelation, between Jerusalem and Athens. I want to be clear, I am not dismissing the role for Greek thought, Roman thought, for reason in general there. Rather,
Sure.
I am making an affirmative argument that of these two things, between Jerusalem and Athens, between reason and revelation, I actually genuinely do believe that Jerusalem and the idea of revelation is actually even more important for a very simple reason, Carl, which is that if you exist in kind of a state of nature, so to speak, and you just kind of close your eyes and you just try to use reason, the problem is that you can actually derive some very, very, very terrible conclusions from that. The Nazis, for instance, Germany was one of the most advanced countries in the world, actually, in the 1920s, 1930s. They were scientifically, culturally, mathematically, philosophically advanced there. They certainly did not have God. They rejected the Bible. They rejected Christianity and so forth there, but they were very reasonable. Ultimately, in Nazi Germany, one manifestation of a reason taken to its logical conclusion was tragically the railroad tracks on the way to Auschwitz and Treblinka. They thought they were acting rationally. I'm not saying that reason is a bad thing. What I am saying is that reason has to be contextualized within a broader pre-existing worldview. Once you have a worldview formed, then you can use reason to analyze there. But you have to have that worldview. And to me, that worldview ultimately gets us back to revelation. So to me, Carl, I realize I'm kind of filibustering here, but Western civilization is largely synonymous with the biblical inheritance, largely synonymous with the two biblical religions, Judaism and Christianity here. Sprinkle in a little bit of Greece and Rome and so forth there, but really at its core, at its absolute core here, we're really talking about scripture in the Bible.
No, listen, Josh, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, frankly, at some point, and I'd love to get your take on this, I look at, I think right now conservatives are having a good time. I mean, we're kicking the Democrats' butt for the most part. It feels, it feels good. We're watching Trump take on a lot of issues that, frankly, I wasn't even sure he'd take on. I mean, he's turning out to be even more conservative this go round than he was in his first go round. But I can tell you that I've, participated with spaces online and conservative groups and what have you, and sometimes just listened in. And then I couldn't help but to think this thought, Josh, and I'd like to get your take on this. At some point in time, just like we're watching or witnessing the Democrats right now go at each other, that's going to happen on the right. And I believe that that's going to happen on the right because the glue that holds us together isn't the Judeo-Christian value system right now. It just seems to be fighting against the left, which frankly I love, but I just don't think that's enough to hold us together long term. Your thoughts?
Well, Carl, my eyes are extremely wide open to this growing phenomenon, this growing cancer, frankly, on the right. I've been very outspoken about it. And frankly, this is one of the reasons why I wrote the book. The woke left kind of is what it is. I'm not a leftist. I'm not a Democrat. I can't necessarily clean out their problem for them, but I am a conservative. I do have a platform, and it is my hope that I can hopefully make some difference within the right in terms of kind of making sure that we understand what we are and who we are and what we are fighting for and what we ultimately are in this game for. Now, there's multiple groups, I think, of troubling actors right now on the right. So I have a chapter in the book dedicated to the anti-Semitism and anti-Westernism threat from the DEI left, the woke left there. All of that is fairly self-explanatory. I also talk about the threat from what I call the neo-Nietzschean right, this nihilist segment of the right that rejects Judaism, rejects Christianity, rejects the Bible in favor, frankly, of some neo-pagan ideas. So there is the popular pseudonymous guy who wrote a book called Bronze Age Pervert. They're the Tate brothers. The Tates are a very prominent example of this, actually, because they talk a lot about strength and this very kind of old school Greco-Roman anti-biblical notion of masculinity and this idea of spreading your seed to as many women as possible. And that's somehow construed as like a manly ideal. All of this is deeply anti-biblical there, but that nonetheless is a rising strand. Carl, there's also another strand that I see out there. I know that you see it as well. That is not explicitly neo-pagan or neo-Nietzschean. Some of these folks call themselves Christians, but they seem like they're calling themselves Christians towards an end goal of trying to severing any connection between Christians and the original people of the book, the Jews. So Candace Owens would be a very prominent example of this. Candace Owens makes a big fuss these days of calling herself a Christian woman there, but frankly, she seems to have no more important goal for her own life at this current time than to try to convince Christians to basically just abandon the Jews there. And I don't care about pushing back against this simply as a Jew. I obviously care a lot about that as a Jew. I also care about it as an American, Carl, for a very simple reason. Going throughout human history, I cannot think of a single example, literally not one, not a single example of a country that has turned on the Jews and has ended up in a better place there. Genesis chapter 12 is pretty clear on this. God shall bless those who bless the children of Israel. He shall curse those who curse them. And I have to say that history has actually largely borne that out. I literally can't think, again, of a single country that has cursed the Jews and been better off for it. So I care a lot about this. I care a lot about turning back the tide on this, not just as a Jew and an observant Jew at that, but as an American patriot who deeply, deeply cares about this country and sees, even on the right side of the aisle, the side of the political aisle that for so long had some semblance of moral clarity, I increasingly am seeing this rot, Carl. And that really, above all, was really what I think motivated me to write this book.
Now, I honestly, you bring up an excellent topic. We only have 20 seconds left in this block, but I can say as a Christian, I've never understood the thought that we need to divorce ourselves from the Old Testament. I'm like, if you do that, then you don't even understand why you need Jesus in the first place. So I'm a whole Bible type of guy. So anyway, we'll be back more with Josh Hammer on the other side. You guys stay tuned. Hey guys, Carl Jackson here for MyPillow, and MyPillow is excited to announce that they are extending the mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. This is your chance to grab incredible deals on some of MyPillow's most popular and newly released items. For example, save $40 on the new spring MyPillow bed sheets available in any size and color. These luxurious sheets are designed for maximum comfort and breathability, perfect for a great night's sleep. Looking for a meaningful gift? Save 30% on the brand new Mike crosses, inspired by the one Mike has worn every day for over 20 years. These beautifully crafted crosses come in both men's and women's designs and are proudly made in the USA. Get the 6-piece bath or kitchen towel sets for just $29.98. Initial quantities are extremely limited, so don't wait. And don't forget the best-selling standard MyPillow, now just $14.98. Plus, orders over $75 receive free shipping. Go to MyPillow.com, use the promo code Carl, or call 800-858-0263. Go there now. Order today. Hey, Carl Jackson here for Fast Growing Trees. Did you know Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the U.S. with thousands of different plants and over 2 million happy customers? They have all the plants your yard needs, like fruit trees, privacy trees, flowering trees, shrubs, and much more. Whatever plants you're interested in, Fast Growing Trees has you covered. Find the perfect fit for your climate and space. Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to get your dream yard. Order online and get your plants delivered directly to your door in just a few days without ever leaving home. Their Alive and Thrive guarantee ensures your plants arrive happy and healthy. Plus, get support from trained plant experts on call to help you plan your landscape, choose the right plants, and learn how to care for them. This is a great deal, guys. I can tell you as a landscaper myself that owns a landscaping business, this is the type of business that I would love. Have the plants delivered directly to my door. I don't have to waste time. So I know as a customer, this would benefit you greatly. It would help you save lots of money, lots of time. You can X out the middleman like me. All right. So listen, here's the deal. This spring, they have the best deals for your yard, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to our show get 15% off their first purchase when using the code Carl at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code Carl at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, promo code Carl, C-A-R-L. I don't spell it like the communists. Now's the perfect time to plant. Use Carl to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. All right, I'm back with my guest, Josh Hammer. Go out and get his new book. And Josh, you may have to help me out because I'm half blind trying to read the title. So I'll just, the subtitle, but Israel and Civilization, the Fate of the Jewish. I'll let you finish it off if you don't mind.
It's the fate of the Jewish nation and the destiny of the West.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm looking forward to getting this book. I've interviewed Josh, obviously, several times. I've read plenty of his works, and actually, I just love reading his work and listening to him. He always makes great arguments for Western civilization, for Judeo-Christian values. And so it's one of the reasons that I love listening to the guy. So we are talking about his book, but also I want to get his take on some of the things that we see happening in culture. And I think as it relates to his book, first off, let me get your take on this. Josh, Chuck Schumer, in honor of Rush Limbaugh, Chuck Schumer. I don't know why I can never get that name out of my mind, but Chuck Schumer, and you correct me if I'm wrong. This is a Jewish man who, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to me that he's ever really aligned with sticking up, at least not in not recently, really aligned with sticking up for the Jewish people, sticking up with Israel. It seems like he's been a backstabber, and it seems like he's getting a dose of his own medicine from the House Democrats right now that are turning against him allegedly because he did not shut down the government, but he worked with Republicans to keep the government funded. Which, frankly, I don't care if the government is shut down or not. I think that's all a farce. But I'm starting to wonder if part of this, Josh, is Chuck Schumer is one. He's kind of getting what he deserves. You reap what you sow, but also, I'm wondering if this is partly because he's Jewish.
Oh, interesting. I'll be honest, Carl, I actually had not thought about that. It's possible. I mean, Chuck Schumer does come from an older guard of Democrats. He's been an elected official for, a half century or so. I mean, a very, very long time now. It's funny. Chuck Schumer used to say, so the Hebrew word for guardian is shomer. And he used to campaign in very Jewish, oftentimes Orthodox Jewish religious parts of Brooklyn. He used to campaign and say that I will be a shomer of Israel. I will be the guardian of Israel, of U.S.-Israel relations. And Chuck Schumer really sold out his soul, frankly, in many ways when it came to the JCPOA, to Barack Obama's Iran nuclear deal, where he basically symbolically came out opposed to the deal at the very, very, very end. Like literally when the ball was on like the half-yard line, we knew that the Democrats had the votes to get this done there. And he was like, oh, yeah, I happen to oppose this. But he didn't lift a single finger to stop the deal in the first place. Chuck Schumer, the number one thing to me that stands out about Chuck Schumer is what I said just a minute ago, is that he has been an elected Democrat for 50 years. This is his whole career. He barely even had a career before he first ran for office in the New York City and New York State legislature there, freshly out of Harvard Law School. I mean, he knows nothing else. He literally knows nothing other than just be a political animal for the Democratic Party. So he's basically a chameleon. He's going to shift in shape and he's going to change his positions when it comes to whatever is currently in vogue and favor with the Democratic Party, because the dude literally does not know anything else whatsoever. Now, your point is well taken. I genuinely had not thought about that. I think it's possible that he's being ganged up on a little bit right now because he is Jewish. He gave a disgraceful speech, Chuck Schumer, on the floor of the United States Senate about a year ago or so, where he basically called for regime change in Israel. He said that the Israeli people should toss aside Benjamin Netanyahu, which is just so absurd for multiple reasons. I mean, this is a democratic ally. This is not exactly like Iran under the Ayatollah or Russia under Putin there. I mean, this is a country that has a genuine system of Republican self-governance. They can choose their own elected officials. Thank you very much there. But he did that speech, Carl, really because of what you're getting at here, which is that he was feeling the heat from very left-wing, anti-Israel, frankly, anti-Semitic Democrats there. So maybe he's getting heat here because of that. Certainly, I continue to be of the opinion that the reason that Democrats did not select Josh Shapiro as Kamala Harris' running mate is exclusively due to the fact that he is Jewish and that his name is Josh Shapiro. It's a very Jewish-sounding name. It's actually even worse than that. When he was being considered, it was down to him, Tim Walz, maybe one or two others. Josh Shapiro, apparently years ago, back when he was a college student, he actually wrote a somewhat clear-eyed essay back when he was a 21-year-old college student there, saying that the Palestinian Arabs have not proven themselves capable of having a nation state, which is obviously correct. I mean, anyone who watched the butchery of October 7th could tell you that that's correct there. But he publicly disavowed that writing. This happened last year when Kamala Harris was still choosing her vice presidential running mate there. He said, oh, I was young, I was naive there. And they basically forced him to do that. They basically said, Jew, you go walk the plank and you walk back that very rational, sober, and correct thing that you said years ago if you want to fit in today's Jew-skeptical, anti-Israel Democratic Party. So at this point, this is a horrific fixture of Democratic politics, but you're absolutely right. It is a fixture nonetheless of the current Democratic Party.
Okay, let me. We have about 5 minutes left. Let me move back to Western civilization and your book. You spoke about wokeism, Islamism, global neoliberalism. let me see if I can fit something in. I've got this view when it comes to NATO. NATO, they're our allies, obviously, but I've been talking about even on Prager's show how increasingly their values don't seem to align with our Judeo-Christian values. Not like we're the end all be all. Being Americans at this point, I mean, I feel like we're falling off the map big time, but certainly they are. They've got rape camps. They've got these Muslim refugees that have taken over swaths of the UK. And I mean, their censorship is absolutely horrendous when it comes to people of faith. I guess what I'm trying to ask is I'm not sure how long we can count on them as allies, as long as their values and ours seem to be going different ways at this point.
Well, our values are going different ways, as are our bottom line commitments when it comes to national defense. You know, Donald Trump was the first president the first time around from 2017 to 2021. He was the first post-NATO president to basically call out our European allies for being not necessarily fully equal allies, but for basically being provinces, for essentially being foreign states, satrapies, we might say, of the American empire. He said, you European nations in NATO, you're not coming anywhere remotely close to fulfilling your NATO treaty obligations when it comes to percentage of gross domestic product spent on military spending. The very predictable result, Carl, was that the number of European nations that met the bare minimum 2% of GDP spent on defense spending threshold, the number of European countries essentially doubled over the course of Trump's presidency. He's doing it at the exact same time. The exact same thing this time around. J.D. Vance with his outstanding speech in Munich at the Munich Security Conference there. Yeah. It was fantastic. It was really just absolute fire, frankly. And someone has to deliver the message to the Europeans. Look, from an American national interest, which is how I say that foreign policy should be viewed. I have an entire chapter in this book, by the way, chapter 7, which makes the explicitly MAGA, America First, foreign policy realist case for close U.S.-Israel relations, frankly, very similar to Donald Trump's own foreign policy. But from an American national interest perspective, focusing just on Europe for a second there, what we should want them to do is to take care of their own backyard. Why don't you guys actually patrol Vladimir Putin in Russia? I mean, Poland, you know, for instance, Eastern Europe, you guys care a lot about Russia, and I totally get it. I mean, for obvious historical reasons, you care a lot about Moscow being on the prowl in that particular part of the world there. But why don't you actually pony up and pay for it? It's the same way that the United States should depend on Israel and our Sunni Arab allies, the Emiratis, Bahrainis, Saudis, and so forth, to patrol their own region, patrol Iran, the Houthis, and the various other jihadist actors there in the region there. All this is so that America can then better focus on our own geopolitical top threat of the century, which is China. So it actually all makes sense when you talk it through. But part of the argument is that Europe has to step the heck up because they're not stepping up. And oh, by the way, they're oppressing people who think like me and you, Carl, while they're at it.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, we only have a minute and a half left. Mahmoud Khalil, I can't wait for his butt to be sent back and deported. Give us your take on what you see still happening, frankly, on these college campuses. I'm thankful that Trump is starting to take away some federal funding, but I think more has to be done. We've got a minute and 20 seconds.
3 cheers for the administration. I love this. I absolutely love this. A lot of people are making this out to be a so-called free speech issue. It is not a free speech issue. First of all, you don't have an unmitigated First Amendment rights to openly support a U.S. recognized foreign terrorist organization and openly call for incitement of violence by supporting that group against your fellow citizens. But most important, Carl, he's not a citizen. He's literally an alien. He is here on a green card. And for purposes of due process and deportation, it doesn't matter whether you're here on a student visa. It doesn't matter whether you're here on an O visa, green card. It doesn't matter. If you are here as an alien, you are here because we, the people, as the sovereign, have offered our beneficence, and it is our discretion that you ought to be here. We can take that away at a second's notice. You know, there's a 1953 U.S. Supreme Court case called Shaughnessy, where the great due process jurist Robert Jackson himself said that due process does not entail an alien with the right to remain here against the people's will. So this is 2 thumbs up, 3 cheers for Donald Trump. I want to see a lot more of where this came from. It might be tied up in the courts for a while, but at a bare minimum, Carl, at a bare minimum, while he's tied up in the courts, he's not going to be doing more shenanigans on Columbia's campus.
Amen. All right. You're listening to Josh Hammer. Go out and get his book, Israel and Civilization, The Fate of the Jewish Nation and the Destiny of the West. All right, you guys stay tuned for more. You're listening to the Carl Jackson Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.